June is Alzheimer's Awareness Month. In a moment, we'll have information on how you can keep your brain sharp.
But first, two people who are battling the disease every day. They both turned to the Alzheimer's Association for help and shared their stories with us.
I was on my way to my doctor's office, a route I had taken many times before, and I got lost. I began to panic, and I moved to the side of the road. I called my wife. She calmed me down, and she gave me information to put into my GPS. I was only half a mile away from my doctor's office. After going through the tests, I was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. I was devastated. I thought of what I would miss: grandchildren, walking my daughter down the aisle, missing my son's graduation, missing the years to come with my wife. Well, my pity party didn't last long. I knew what I was going to do, whatever I could, for as long as I could, to stay healthy in mind and body. And today, I advocate for greater awareness of the disease. I still have my pity parties every now and then, but I don't allow them to last long. Instead, I just repeat to myself, I have Alzheimer's, but it doesn't have me.
I was 52 years old when I was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. 2 years prior, I had suffered a number of seizures during a weekend ski trip, and over the next months, I noticed a gradual decline in my ability to remember everyday things. When I was finally diagnosed, I was scared and unsure of what life would look like in the future. I often forget the names of longtime friends, and I have trouble remembering where I placed items around the house. I've had to retire as a physical therapist, a role which I cherished for 30 years. I want to tell my story to let others suffering from this disease know that they are not alone. I want to lend another voice to the movement to find a cure and end this disease.
Those are just a couple of the stories from the estimated 5.3 million Americans who are battling Alzheimer's disease, a number that's expected to reach nearly 14 million by the year 2050.
And here with some very important warning signs and some tips to help keep your brain healthy is NBC News medical contributor Dr. Natalie Azar. Good morning, Natalie.
Good morning, guys.
As we saw in Brian and Nancy's story, so often I think we think of Alzheimer's as an older person's illness, but I lost my mother-in-law. She was diagnosed at 53 years old, and we lost her last year after a 17-year battle with Alzheimer's. So this can happen to younger people, too.
It can. I mean, the majority of people diagnosed with Alzheimer's are still over the age of 65, but around 5%. The number reported by the Alzheimer's Association can affect younger people. That's called early onset, and that would be in the 40s and 50s. It's important to remember, though, that the changes in the brain can start happening 20 years before the earliest symptoms. So, you know, it's certainly a disease that does and can afflict younger people.
Can we look to some of the warning signs? These come from the Alzheimer's Association, starting with memory loss that kind of disrupts your daily life.
Right, and memory loss actually is one of the most common, most frequent early symptoms. And this is not something really important to remember. It's recent memory. So what characteristically people will say is that they can remember very vivid details from their childhood, but it's that recent memory, that short-term memory that they have difficulty with. So they'll be repeating themselves often, asking for help, relying on devices to remember things that normally they wouldn't have any difficulty with.
Also difficulty with familiar tasks. Brian, when he talked about just trying to get home, he got lost.
Exactly.
And had to use GPS.
So doing things in your daily life that you're accustomed to, balancing a home budget, for example, driving, you know, to a familiar place that you've gone to every day for the last number of years, and suddenly you get lost in the middle of it. It's a very, very classic, you know, symptom.
A couple others are problems with words and speaking or writing and misplacing things. If we look at some things we can do to prevent, though, we're talking about loving your brain. What are some of those?
So this, I think some two words to think about are be strategic and give your brain something challenging. So we're talking about jigsaw puzzles and doing art, keeping yourself engaged with other people. You're just doing things to stimulate the brain constantly. There's this idea that people with higher education perhaps have a lower incidence of dementia. And I think this is important to get out to middle-aged people. Go back to school. It doesn't necessarily correlate with how far you got when you were 20 or in your early 20s. You should still try to be engaging and learning and rewiring your brain. Your brain is an active muscle. If you don't use it, you can, you know, theoretically lose it. And I should say that these are all things that can help to sort of allay the symptoms a little bit, but we don't have any definitive evidence that this actually can slow down or prevent the disease.
Great information, and we have so much more information, Dr. Natalie Azar, on our website. Just head to today.com. Also, the Alzheimer's Association is a great resource as well.